Where are you located?
We're on the Mississippi Gulf Coast,
Oh, okay. Well,
and
yeah, I've been watching the news and seeing, this swath of horror going across the country
oh
of
yeah.
Yeah.
really terrible.
Well, usually how the show goes is we'll do a little intro where we do whatever whoever we're sponsored by this week, and then we'll go into the show. You probably won't hear the theme music, so you'll just
I'll
once
use
we
my
come in.
imagination.
Yeah, once we come in, we'll introduce you and we'll just kind of talk. It's more of a more of a conversational thing than an interview. So just
That's great.
And I got one major album I need to talk to you about because I'm trying to keep my cool because I'm completely geeking out right now that you're on the show.
Well, I'm naked from the waist down, so and I'll just put these in,
Awesome, that looks
There
awesome.
you go.
and that'll calm us down.
And we only
I'm
get
game for anything.
and we only get 40 minutes because we're poor and we still don't have enough money to buy a year's worth of Zoom to make longer calls. So
Oh, fantastic!
try to fit as much as we can into 40 minutes. But if you're ready, I'm pretty much good to go here.
I'm good to go whenever you are.
All right,
All right.
Jacob, you
I've
want to
got
do
her.
the ad read up
Hi,
front?
Jacob.
Hi, nice to meet
We
you. I'm
haven't said
Jacob.
hello yet, so
Yeah, not formally. We'll
Oh,
get
yeah.
to know each other over 40 minutes.
yeah.
You want to do the ad read?
Yeah, do you want to give me a countdown or are we good to go?
Just go ahead. We're already recording.
All right. Thank you to our sponsor, Aquaries, which consists of a team of creatives headed by experienced content creators Patty Dwyer, Zachary Perkins, and Dalton Roan. They specialize in entertainment, photography, and filming, producing music videos, mixing music, as well as producing and hosting comedy shows. Got an idea? They'll bring it to life. They just released a music video for local rapper Knuckle Nate's Mind Fucked Up. This Friday, they are putting on a comedy showcase at Belux, Biloxi's hottest new bar, which will be followed by their trademark game of spicy charades, a game of charades where the participants each eat a million Scoville pepper. Catch them on Chromecast on February 28th and contact their Facebook or Instagram to find out how they can bring your vision to life. And again, thank you to our Patreon supporter, Ernie Kinnemer, and let's roll the music.
Spicy charades is my favorite Mexican dish. Here we go.
Spicy charades, that's what they called me.
Ooh, it's Thursday night. You know what that music means. It's time for the Open Micers podcast. My name is Jason Robbins.
I'm Jacob Craig, and
Oh
we
my
are
gosh.
both very
Oh my gosh,
excited.
tonight.
Do you want to
Oh.
do an intro, Jason?
Oh,
you
man.
never get to do an intro.
We
you do
got-
an intro.
Oh, we got a legend with us tonight. I'm totally trying to keep my cool because we have one of the coolest people on planet Earth right now. He's a bass player. He's been on so many albums. It like if I was to just sit here and name the albums this man's been on, we would be here for the entire 40 minutes. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to introduce him right now. Mr. Leland Sklar is with us.
I am so thrilled to be here with you. I can't even put it into words.
Fantastic. It's so good to meet you.
It's a pleasure, man. Nice to meet you too also.
One of the things I want to go right into, you've been on, and Jacob, you did look up the right Leland Sklar this episode, didn't you?
Wait, is it Leland Sklar or Leland Sklar? I'm gonna double check real quick.
Yeah, we had a little mix up a few weeks ago where Jacob looked up the wrong guest.
It's an honest mistake.
I'm willing to be anybody.
But you've been on so many classic albums, but one of the ones I want to ask you about, and you can just sit here and tell me stories. You
Sure.
were on one of my favorite albums of all time, Billy Cobham's Spectrum.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, please just give me stories. Like, what was it like to record that album?
Well, a bit of history going into that. I was in a band called The Section, which was James Taylor's band and Jackson Brown's. One of the tours that we did was opening for Mahavishnu Orchestra for about 7 weeks. And I became friends with all the guys and became friends with Billy during the course of that tour. So when all that stuff ended, I think it was in 73, Billy called me and he asked me if I would like to come back to New York from LA and do his solo album. And I thought for a second and said, yes, of course I want to be back there. Um, we cut it at Electric Lady Studios in New York, and the thing that was surprising to me was in the late 60s, I was in a band called Wolfgang in Los Angeles, and we were managed by a company that had another act called Zephyr, and Tommy Bolin was in Zephyr. And Tommy and I were old friends because of this. I had no idea Tommy was going to be playing on Spectrum. And so when I arrived at the studio and went in, all of a sudden I see my old compatriot from many years earlier, and I was thrilled. And so it was Billy and myself and Jan Hammer and Tommy Bolin.
Wow.
We basically cut all the tracks that we did in 2 days. It's pretty much first takes of everything or second take. Um, there was.
Which is
Go ahead.
amazing to me because those songs are crazy, like progressive rock
Oh
type
yeah.
songs. How did you do that in 2 days? Like, were the songs already written when you got
Well,
there?
yeah, I mean, Billy had got pretty much with Jan had laid out, the structure in
Hmm.
terms of the layout of the songs, but it was, and Tommy came in a day early because they had sketched out a few things on charts for me just to have as a guide, and Tommy couldn't read music, so he came in early to work with Jan just to get the heads and stuff worked out on the songs. But every bit of soloing, there's no overdubs on any of
Wow.
that. There's one of the songs, I can't remember, the titles evade me. It might be Tarian Matador or one of those. But there's a point in it where Tommy and Jan are trading solos back and forth, licks back and forth. And at one point, if you listen carefully, you hear Tommy going, ring, ring, ring.
Yeah.
At the end of the third one, you hear a, and he broke his E string
Ah.
on that. Kept right on playing, finished his solo, played the head, and never went back and fixed it. It's so that's on the record. But Robert Moog came down to the studio, and if you listen, there's all those things that are going on that sound like sequencing and stuff. That
Hmm.
and it's all Billy playing like the first incarnation of electronic drums that Robert Moog had designed, and it was amazing. One of the most amazing things was there was Sam Ash Music was one of the big music stores on 48th Street, and Billy had always lusted after this Chinese crash cymbal in there that was Gene Krupa's, and it
Oh
was
yeah.
hanging on the wall, and he got them to let him take it to the studio and put it on. Now Ken Scott, the great Ken Scott, was engineering this album, and they set up this crash cymbal. And the first time Billy rode that crash cymbal, I looked and Ken was levitated about 4 feet off the ground, and his hair was sticking straight up in the air.
Oh no, did we
Thing I
freeze?
ever
Oh.
heard in my life. All the meters, man, meters pegged on that. And so they ended up putting the cymbal back behind Billy. So when he wanted to play it, it was off mic and he would reach behind him and play it.
Wow.
Um, it was an amazing thing. It was all raw energy on that. And
Yeah.
the thing I think that made that album as good as it was and still is was the fact that Billy and Jan were really coming from jazz fusion direction, and Tommy and I were both rock players. And so rather than all the guys being like fuso jazz guys, it has more of a grounding on that level because we weren't blowing. We were more like Tommy really loved playing rhythm on the stuff, and I really loved just finding like on Stratus, just finding a bass line that held the whole thing together rather than going off and starting to blow other parts through it. So I love
Yeah.
that album, and to
Oh
me,
yeah.
today it's as strong an album today as it was back in 1973.
Yeah, it's one of those albums that I just sing the praises of to everybody. Any one of my musician friends or meet musicians who've never listened to that album. Like most people think, oh, it's just a drummer's album, but it's not.
No, not at all.
It is
Every
one
time,
of
every time I see Jeff Beck, Jeff
yeah.
Beck comes running up to me going, Stratus,
Yeah.
Stratus, and he said that album changed the way he looked at guitar.
Oh
because of the
yeah.
way Tommy played. I mean, it really had a huge impact on a lot of people,
Mhm.
and certainly we didn't see it when it was going down. I mean, we were all in there playing, having a great time over these couple of days, and drink. We kind of lived on. There was an Orange Julius down the street, and we were getting buckets of strawberry Julius and doing that. And on the second night when we finished working, we went to an Indian restaurant called Nirvana and had dinner. And that was it. Then I got right back on a plane and flew home. And they worked the next day because there were two songs on that album that Ron Carter played upright on that were like big band songs that had horn section
Oh
and
yeah.
everything. And I had to get back to LA, um, so that was cool. And also, before we go any farther, I just wanted to say it was really a tragic day today, hearing that Chick Corea died.
I know. I literally just saw that before we
Yeah,
started that Chick
yeah,
Corea passed away today. Like, man,
yes. Some bizarre cancer. Yeah, they said it was a very rare cancer that he had. It
mhm.
was a recent diagnosis, supposedly, and he's
Wow.
such an amazing, amazing musician. It's really terribly tragic that he's
We've
gone.
lost too many amazing musicians over the last year. I mean,
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I
it's too
agree.
bad,
I
man.
agree. There's a
And
lot
just
of people
yesterday,
that
we
need to
lost
be
Larry
gone.
Flint as well.
I didn't
Yeah,
even know that. Really?
yeah,
Yeah, dude, Larry Flint died
Huh.
yesterday.
yeah,
I didn't know that
yeah,
either. Wow.
yeah. People
Yeah.
are people are going. I guess that's part of the program, but
Yeah.
it's really sad.
But you were talking about that album, and you're throwing out names of like these legendary people I've heard my entire life, like Jan Hammer, who, if
Yeah,
you don't know who that is, if you listen to pretty much any, if you watched any TV in the '80s, Jan Hammer pretty much did every
well,
theme song
well,
back in the
certainly for like
'80s.
Miami Vice, that was
Yeah.
such a signature
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
thing for him. But monstrous player, absolutely monstrous musician. And you go and look at any footage of Mahavishnu Orchestra and any of those
Mm-hmm.
projects, or when Jeff Beck and Jan Hammer were working together, it's deep. Man, it's deep as the ocean.
Yeah. That and Robert Moog as well. And if
Yeah,
anybody doesn't know who that is, he created the Mini Moog.
yeah, the
Uh,
Moog
yeah, the
synthesizers.
Moog synthesizer, and the probably the most recognizable use of that synthesizer was "Dancing in the Streets" that Van Halen did on
Oh, really?
Diver Down. That's what he used for that song was the
Yeah,
Moog synthesizer.
yeah. He was a genius. I mean, amazing. These guys like that, the George Massenbergs and all these guys that are just, they invented flubber, I think. They think on another level.
So tell us more about, I mean, I don't even know where to start really with all the albums that you've been on. I mean, really, like, let's go back to the beginning. Like, how did you get started in the music business? Like, what was your first step into this wonderful career you've had?
Um, I think a pivotal moment in my life was when I was in this band Wolfgang that was working with Zephyr and all that. Um, we had a drummer in the band who had a friend named John Fishbeck, and John owned a studio in Los Angeles called Crystal Recorders, and he did all of the early Stevie Wonder records, Songs in the Key of Life, and
Mm.
this.
Oh yeah.
Well, he would come and hang out at our rehearsals, and this was like in '69, and excuse me, um, and at one of our rehearsals, he ended up bringing a friend of his who had just gotten back to town from England, and it was James Taylor. And James had cut his first album on Apple Records, and he hung out for a couple of days with us at our rehearsals, checking out stuff, and he played us his music, and we were going, shit, this guy's really good. This is pretty great. And that was it. And he split. Well, he got at that point he got offered a gig at the Troubadour in Los Angeles, and they had a sort of the complete band. They had Danny Korchmar on guitar, Russ Kunkel on drums, and Carole King was the piano player. And they needed a bass player, and he remembered me from this rehearsal and told Peter Asher, who was managing and producing him, and they tracked me down through, I think probably through John Fishbeck, and asked me if I would play this one gig with him at the Troubadour. And I said, sure. I was still in college at this point, pursuing a totally different career. And it was like the perfect storm. James was the perfect artist for this period. had James not come to that rehearsal, we would have never met. So he would have never called me. But we did that one gig, and the next thing you know, he's on the cover of Time magazine, and started an entire new wave of music. And I was taken up in this tsunami that went along with it. So I basically went from having only been in the studio once to do demos with our band to being a first call player in
So it was
town, and
just
we were
fate.
suddenly doing like 4 dates a day, 5, 6 days a week.
So it was just fate, like just being right at the right place at the right
Yeah, it
time.
was exactly that. And the good part of it was when the opportunity came, I did have the goods for
Mm,
it, because a lot of people find themselves in that position, but they
mhm.
really don't have what's needed at
Yeah.
the time. And for me, it was like another perfect thing where the thing I really enjoyed doing was exactly what was needed at this moment. And and so, I mean, it's like I thought it was one gig, and it turned into the rest of my life.
Wow.
And you probably had no idea either that
No,
that one gig at the Troubadour would lead to over 2,000 albums.
yeah, no, not in a million years. And I think James wasn't my first recording, and I'll bet these guys were at the Troubadour gig, because the first studio gig I got called to do was for Brian Hyland, and he was produced by Del Shannon. And Del was a big star at that point, and Brian had just had a huge hit with um, Itsy Bitsy Teensy Weensy Yellow Polka Dot. He had the novelty thing, but he had some other major hit records at the time, and Russ and I ended up working on his album. And that was before I did James's first album that I did with him, which I think was One Man Dog, perhaps. I think it was One Man Dog was the first one, either Mudslide Slim or One Man Dog. I don't remember at this point, but it's been an unbelievable run, and I literally pinch myself every day. Plus I dig pinching myself, so that's it just gives me an opportunity. But I've never taken this for granted. I feel incredibly fortunate that I've had this run, and that without the pandemic, I had a solid year's worth of work going on, and of course, it all disappeared like a fart in a hurricane when this went down, like everybody else.
Yeah. So what was it? I mean, what's it like to kind of know that and you pretty much created a sound like in the 70s and 80s, like you're a huge part of that. And
Yeah.
what is that like to have
Well,
make that sort of stamp on music history?
Well, you don't see it as it's going down, certainly. I mean, you're just happy to be working.
Yeah.
As a musician, everybody's paranoid when you're a musician, and you're
Mm.
always hoping to get another call. The day you finish a gig and there's nothing in front of you, you think you'll never work again, kind
Yeah.
of thing. So during my whole career, I've never really looked back on it and thought about what's been accomplished. I really try to look forward. The thing I was fortunate about, I believe, was being in a situation where I a lot of genres and doing rock and roll and
Mhm.
country and
Yeah.
jazz and hip hop and doing TV and movies and all that stuff. So it's been for me really interesting, because the variety of music and musicians that I've gotten to work with is incredibly wide. And that's what's kept me really engaged and enjoying this. Where, one day I could be working with Billy Cobham, and the next day I was working with Andy Griffith.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Things like that. I mean, to me, that's heaven. Having those opportunities.
Yeah,
And
and I'm glad you said that too, because that actually leads into a question that I had, because
Hmm.
you've worked with so many people over so many genres, from, just for the folks at home who may not know, Ricky Martin, Bee Gees, Dolly Parton, even Ray Charles you've worked
Yeah.
with. And I wanted to know, like, when you're performing with all these people, is the bass technique that they ask for different across all genres, or does like the language of rhythm kind of stay the same in a way working with
Well,
all these people?
I think my approach and my sound and everything has remained kind of consistent throughout all of those.
Mm.
They've never, for the most part, the artists have never really asked me to change anything for them. Engineer, producer might have something, but to me, everything I do is predicated on the song that we're doing at that moment and what the song needs. and I usually make the determination at that point as to, you know, what the part should be, how busy. But I'm always welcoming, you know, input from the people I'm working with. If they have an idea, man, throw it my way and let me, you know, let me digest it and work with that too. Because I think the interesting part of this is the collaborative aspect of music. So
Mhm.
getting to work with all these unbelievable musicians, and everybody's got their own thing, and you try to glean from each one what you can, but it's all really predicated on the song. And I look at, you know, like something like Stratus. I used exactly the same settings and stuff on Doctor My Eyes with Jackson Brown, and James Taylor's music. I haven't, I don't really change that much from them. I think my parts might change just based on the genre and the individual song, but sonically, I'm kind of whatever sound I ended up creating for myself seems to, it's kind of like Zelig. It kind of just, you know, shows up in everything and seems to
Mm.
work.
Well, I would imagine so that if somebody is hiring you to come in and be a part of a production, that you know they know who you are and the
Yeah.
things you've done. So it's kind of like I know what he does. I know that he's gonna bring what I want.
Well,
Is that a lot of it too?
I think that's probably a good you know, a good chunk of it is that. But like I said, I also welcome input from them. So I mean, I might show up and they have. I did one album project. It was a Japanese project, and they had done a lot of pre-production in Japan. And the producer on it, an artist, said that when they were creating these parts, they said they thought about me and what I would play, and that's what inspired them. And then they played me the demo, and I thought to myself, not in a million years would I have ever played that. I mean, I couldn't say it, but I was sitting there thinking, what the hell do they think I do to make think that that's designed around what I do? But we sorted it all out, and they were very happy, you know, when it was over. But you know, each project has its own demands, and you can't. When I go to work, literally, I'm joining another band every day when I go to work, and you have to assimilate into what that person's doing. I mean, it could be Clint Black one day or Reba McEntire. I did tons and tons of country records,
Mhm.
and you go in and you become a part of their band for that day or that week that you're in the studio, and it also doesn't matter to me if a new artist contacts me to play with them. I take the same dedication to them as I would take to Phil Collins when I would work with Phil, because this is their career. You know,
Yeah.
this is their life, and it's you're there, and they may never have the luxury or opportunity to be in the studio recording again. So you want to make it the best possible experience it can be for them. Now, in your heart, you may go, nobody's ever going to hear this. I mean, it's not very good or any, but you've answered. You have two options when the phone rings. You can say yes or no. And if you say yes, it comes with obligations. And you go in and you make it the very best you possibly can.
Yeah. Well, you like you said, you work with Phil Collins, and arguably one of the, you know, his seminal albums, "No Jacket Required."
Yeah.
And not only that, but I mean, just in the '80s alone, I mean, you worked with him, you worked with Daryl Hall, John Oates, and my favorite here is you did the A Team theme song.
Oh,
Yes,
absolutely.
I was absolutely going to bring that up. The A Team is one of my favorite shows of all time.
Dun, dun, dun.
And that's so crazy. Like, as an 8-year-old kid, I would never listen to the A Team theme song and think, you know what? I'm going to interview someone who was on that
Yeah.
theme song one day. Never would have thought.
Well, you know, miracles do happen.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, all that stuff goes back to 1967 for me because I was in a band called Group Therapy, and our producer was Mike Post. And these years
Mhm.
later, I ended up reconnecting with Mike, and he and his partner Pete Carpenter were like the kings of television theme songs.
Oh yeah.
And I started with the Rockford Files, and we did
Oh, yeah.
Hill Street Blues and the A Team, and all of these shows, Magnum PI,
Don't
Um,
forget Alf.
Oh,
Elf.
yeah.
Well,
Oh,
and the
yeah,
thing
Mike
that's cool
Post.
about that is the composer's name was Elf.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah,
That's all I've wanted from the Alf theme song.
yeah, Alf Clausen wrote the theme for the music for Elf. I think
Wow.
it just brilliant. But yeah, it's all been fun. I mean, I got to play. I did It's Raining Men. I got to work with Helen Reddy on I Am Woman, and it's been really a fun run. I could never find a negative in what's going on. There's been a couple of moments that you could have done without, but I would say 99% of everything I've been involved with really was enjoyable. And I feel very fortunate for that.
Do you ever listen back to anything you've done in the past, like in any just any track where you're listening to it and you're like, man, I think I could have done that a little better, or do you listen back and go, that was okay, that was pretty good?
Yeah, it's one of those things. It was interesting. I'm kind of on the advisory board on Bass Player magazine, which is just one of these things. They just get a ton of bass players and they say you're on the advisory board. But in one of their publications, they had a question where they were asking the advisors, if you could go back in time and change anything, what would you do? And I was reading everybody's thing in print. It was all these paragraphs about specific songs and how they would have done them differently. And I see my name on there, and it says nothing. And it's really true. I can't go back and judge something I did in 1975 at this point and
Yeah.
think, oh, I could have done this, because at that moment that was the right thing to do. I wouldn't do it the same if I was recording it now, but you really can't judge that any other period, because it's like talking about clothes of the 80s.
Oh yeah.
And
Absolutely.
in the 80s everybody thought bell bottoms and platform shoes were hip. Now it's kitsch, and they look back and go, why would people have done that? But in the moment it's the right thing. So um, I hear things that I would play differently now, but I don't judge in that way. And I generally, when I listen to music that I've been involved with, I don't focus on the bass part. I still like to listen to things as an entirety, and those things fit the track at the time.
Mhm.
But I would do it different now, probably, or some things the same. Or sometimes I wish I still had the chops I had back then.
I'm sure you still do.
Well,
You
I've
still
still
got
got
it.
chops, but they're the scariest part of this whole pandemic has been just trying to keep your chops up
Oh
without
yeah.
being touring and not working all the time. You have to kind of force yourself to come in and really put some hours in and play, just to maintain calluses and
Yeah.
muscle
Mhm.
memory and all that.
Have you done
And
any
so,
recording with anybody where you have to do it over like sending back and forth
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
files and stuff?
I'm actually doing a project right now with Ian Pace from Deep Purple, the drummer in Deep Purple,
Ooh.
and he sent me a bunch of files, and I've sent one song back so far, and he was really happy with it. And I did an album with a guy in Ireland and another one in New Zealand.
mm,
Before the pandemic, ever recorded at home. I've never had a home studio, but some
right.
friends of mine decided to do a cover of Easy Love Her. And they asked me if I would play on it, and I said I'd love to, but I'm not set up for recording at home. And usually when people would send me files in the past, I would use it as an excuse to go to lunch with somebody. So we, go over to a friend of mine's house who had a home studio, and we'd do the bass part, and then go out and get pizza or something like that. But with COVID, that all ended because nobody sees each other
Hmm.
anymore. And so on this project, he had a friend at SSL, and they ended up sending me a SSL 2 Plus interface, and I just ended up, plugging into GarageBand and
Hmm.
talked to, because I'm in a band right now with the guys I've been with for 50 years, and I called Steve Postel, who's one of the members of the immediate family, and I said, okay, run me through this. And so he gave me a tutorial on GarageBand, and I plugged in and started working from home. I haven't really opened it up to release telling people, yeah, I'm here if you want to do it. But because
Mhm.
I've ended up with so many projects going on other than just that my days are like just packed more than they would have been had I been on the road.
Hmm.
It's like It's been a
Wow.
really interesting year. I'll
Yeah.
say that. I mean,
Oh yeah.
it's been a horrendous year for so many people.
Yeah.
And one of the one of the things that you can't wait for this to end, for all the suffering on health wise, financially, business. There's so many things have gone down the crapper on this. But I really looked at it when it started and thought, what the hell am I going to do? Because all my work was gone, and and that's how I ended up creating this YouTube channel that I've been doing, and I've been that occupies first half of every day. I've put up about 400 and doing this recording and doing our band. So it's been a crazy busy year, but you know, just staying alive
Yeah.
right now, as the
Would
Bee Gees
much
would
rather
say.
not be in the circumstances we're in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everything right now is Plan B because Plan A went down the crapper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And,
Jacob,
but
you got any more? You got any more questions for Mr. Sklar? We're starting
Yeah.
to tick down the clock here.
Yeah, I do have one very short question
Yeah.
that I wrote. It's very important. It's very important to me. I need to know because you've done the music for all of these shows, but I want to know which one is your favorite, the A Team, Rockford Files, or Magnum PI?
Ooh.
ooh, ooh. That's really good. I love the theme to Rockford Files because I loved
Mhm.
working with Tommy Morgan, who played harmonica on that. He's one of the greatest harmonica players ever. But they all have their own thing, and the shows were all fun because all those shows had great chase scenes, and the chase
Absolutely.
scenes were always really long charts, so we really got to dig in and have fun. Uh, but I really enjoyed all of those.
Mhm.
It's like who's your favorite child kind of thing.
Right. I mean, I have an answer to that one.
Okay,
I only have one, but yeah, she's my favorite.
okay. Now, of those shows, which would have been your favorite?
Oh, absolutely the A Team.
Okay,
100%. But
I,
I will say that Rockford Files is totally underrated.
oh, I do
yeah,
love me some Rockford Files, and I do love the A Team, but I think my favorite's got to be the Greatest
Really?
American Hero.
Oh, yeah.
well, and I
Okay.
tell you, the thing that was really cool is that was being used on one of the Super Bowl commercials.
Yeah,
The
I
one
saw
with
that commercial the other
yeah,
day.
Jason
Really?
Alexander. It's a
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Tide soap commercial, and they're using Greatest American Hero for that.
Yeah, I called that out the other day during the Super Bowl. I heard it and I said, isn't that the Greatest American Hero theme song? I'm interviewing someone who wrote that song. He's
Yeah,
on that song.
yeah,
It's
yeah. It was really
amazing.
thrilling for them. I'm sure Joey Scarberry and those guys are probably beyond themselves that that thing got
Oh yeah.
resurrected for that.
Do you find that happens to you a lot where you like go to the grocery store or something, you're like, "Oh yeah, that's me playing bass."
Yeah, it happens a lot, but I don't I recognize the song. I don't think about that it's me, but I do recognize it. The hardest part of my gig sometimes has been that when I'm involved in basic tracks. And
Mhm.
there's times where I'll walk out and I'm done with basic tracks and I'm going on to another project. But by the time they finish it, they've put on strings and horns, lead vocal. And sometimes I hear a song and I go, God, that sounds familiar. But I don't recognize it because it's so different from what we left with when we were just doing the rhythm date. And then suddenly it hits me and I go, oh, cool. I wondered how that turned out. Because generally I don't hear stuff after things don't get released until long after your job is done and you've
Mhm.
done a lot of other things in the interim. So you
Absolutely.
don't necessarily recognize it at that point.
Well,
And
Mr. Sklar, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. We want to get you on again because I need to talk to you
anytime.
more. I
I
have
need
to.
to as well. I will say that you have been the most anticipated guest in our
Yes.
recent memory that we're very excited to have had you on.
Well, I'm certainly during this period I'm not going anywhere, so call me anytime. If somebody cancels on you, just figure I'm filler and I could come in.
Absolutely.
Well, before we go, we just got to ask you one question. We ask every guest.
Sure.
What advice do you give to an up and coming bass player that wants to get started in the music industry?
Um, I think listen to as much music as you can. I mean, it depends what you want to do in
Mhm.
the business. It's all predicated if you want to be in a band and just do that, or if you want to try to do studio work. because there's different requirements for each of these things.
Yeah.
But to me, it's like ultimately, I always say, just have fun, enjoy it, get as much chops as you can, network as much as you can, because so much of this business, like for me, meeting James through another guy at another band's rehearsal changed my life. So you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So be open to everything, and just have fun with it. Though when you're in this business, man, it is a blessing to play music and to bring pleasure to people in this world. So to be able to do this as your vocation rather than a hobby is it's pretty cool.
Well, one day, hopefully, I'll get to play drums with you.
Okay, I've been waiting.
Trying to make that happen one of these days. But thank you so much for coming on the show. We're definitely going to have you back on again. We want to talk to you way more about everything. Well, and Jacob,
I'm here for you.
And where can people find you on the internet? Do you have any social media or anything like that?
Yeah, when I'm not kicked off of Facebook, which is usually about 150 days a year, they can find me on Facebook. I kind of do Instagram. I like Facebook because I can be long-winded there, where Twitter and Instagram are not quite the formats for me, even though. This book that I did, I've got a website for that, and I can be reached through that, which is lelandsklar'sbeard.com. And the book is 6,000 photographs of people giving me the finger.
Fantastic.
I am going to get that book.
It's incredible. It's a huge coffee table book, really good. But the other thing is, my YouTube channel is really where I've become devoted. And it's just Leland Sklar channel on YouTube, and there's mountains of videos on that, and there's a clubhouse people can join, and I do 2 live streams a month on that, which last about 2.5 hours, and it's like $10 a month, So
awesome.
It's a lot of fun though, and a great community grew out of this pandemic on that. There's about 147,000 people on that channel.
Well, it was so good having you, and we just want to tell everybody, go head over to @OpenMicers on pretty much everywhere, @OpenMicers on Twitter, OpenMicers Podcast on Facebook. Go head over to on any of our social media. You can buy T-shirts. We got our T-shirts and mugs and stickers and masks, all that stuff. And so we will see you guys next week.
We never hear it over the Zoom. It's only Jason that gets to hear it.
I get to hear it.
Cool.
Well, that was awesome. Thank you, Mr. Sklar. That was great.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolute pleasure, man. Anytime. Feel free to give a shout. And Eileen's so great to work with.
Oh yeah. And thank you guys for watching on Twitch. I'll be back in about 30 minutes for Nerd Cave Retro. See you guys in a little bit.